Hey everybody. So, in honor of May the 4th, and because I have previously made a video before Star Wars Battlefront 3 had been announced, um, talk about how I really liked Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2, and I was hoping at the time that they would announce Star Wars Battlefront 3. Now that it's happened, I want to talk about the 5 things that I think, as fans of Star Wars Battlefront, we do want in the next game. Now, some of these things are already confirmed not happening, so this is more of a wish list. And obviously, there's a lot of opinion involved, and I'm entirely open to other people posting their opinions in the comments, whether you agree, disagree, have other things. It's only a top 5 list, so there's some honorable mentions, and there are definitely things I didn't think of. Because I haven't been following Star Wars Battlefront 3's development super closely, but I did some research for this video. So for me, the number 5 thing that I want is, for those of you who have played Star Wars Battlefront 2, you know there was Mos Eisley Assault. And that was when you could play as any Jedi character in the game, or any Sith character in the game, along with like Boba Fett and Han Solo and stuff like that. And what I want is, I want to see that same thing brought back, but I want to see it on every map. In Star Wars Battlefront 1, the Jedi were really overpowered, and they just hadn't thought of that idea yet. In Star Wars Battlefront 2, they had begun to experiment with it, so it seems to me like a natural progression would be in Star Wars Battlefront 3 to just have that feature on every map. And on that note, the number 4 thing that I think we all should want is we want all of the maps from the previous games. So, in Star Wars Battlefront 2, they actually took out a lot of the maps from Star Wars Battlefront 1. In Battlefront 1, every planet had 2 different battles you could fight. But then in 2, they reduced it down to 1. And in fact, my favorite map was taken out. My favorite map in Star Wars Battlefront was on Tatooine. It was not Mos Eisley, but it was one where there were Tusken Raiders and you had the Sarlacc pit. Both of which I thought were really cool and introduced a lot of strategy. Because the Tusken Raiders weren't that hard to take out, but you would lose some people doing it. But if you beat them, you would get 2 more command posts. But it's risky. Because if you waste all of your men, fighting the Tusken Raiders, and then your opponent swoops in at the last minute and takes 1 or even both of their command posts, then you lost a whole lot of people for nothing. Or for no net gain, at least. So I liked that map, because that had strategy, it had cool stuff, it had starfighters, it had, like, the AT-ST walkers. It had, the Jawa's vehicle, the big thing that they use in A New Hope to trade droids. It had the Tusken Raiders, it had the Sarlacc pit. It was cool! And then they took it out for the second game. So what type of sequel does that? Why on earth would you ever take out features? So I think that was dumb. I hated it at the time, and I would love to see them bring back all of the maps, and more. It would be great even if they just use all the maps from Battlefront 1 and 2. 2 had a few unique maps in it. So if they combine all of those, it would be excellent. So, number 3 is balanced and playable Jedi. This has always been a problem for Star Wars Battlefront. In the first game, the Jedi were absurd, but they didn't necessarily kill a ton of people because the AI wasn't that great, so they could get stuck in corners and stuff. But they were absurd. They were next to impossible to kill. I remember one time I was playing as the droids. I was playing, and we had to face off against Mace Windu. And I swear, the enemy, we had like 80 people left. The clones had like 3, including Mace Windu. And Mace Windu, no, it must have been higher than that, because the Jedi dies when you get down to 16. So they must have had like 20 people. The point is, we were destroying them. And we had all of these turrets all shooting at him. And it was hilarious, because he was somehow blocking like 50 shots every couple seconds. Like, he could be hit from 4 different angles and somehow block all of them. The Jedi were basically invincible. But in the second game, the Jedi didn't really make sense, because you got more health by killing things, which that doesn't make any logical sense, but okay, you want to reward players for doing well, but I felt like the Jedi were actually really underpowered. Because if you got a good shot, you could literally take them out with a missile strike. So what's the point then, really? So something in between. I would rather have them be a little too good, a little unbalanced, because Jedi should be scary. Like, if you're a clone, a stormtrooper, and like Anakin, or oh my gosh, that's a bad mistake. Oh, Luke Skywalker comes at you, you should be terrified. The Jedi should be badass. And the number two thing, and this is already confirmed not happening, and it annoys me. In fact, it makes me worried for the quality of the game. A good campaign plot. We already know there's not actually going to be a single-player campaign, which for me is terrible. I never played the online at all in Battlefront 1 or 2. I mean, I had the PlayStation 2 version. What do you expect? But, like, I don't mind them expanding multiplayer. In fact, that's a good thing. But not at the expense of the single player. This is becoming like a Call of Duty type of thing, where the single player doesn't nearly matter as much. And it used to have a decent plot. Like Star Wars Battlefront 2, you kind of got invested in the plot. You know, in Star Wars Battlefront 1, maybe not as much, but it was still nice to have it. And it's not hard. Like, why can't they make a campaign plot? It's not as if there isn't enough material. With the expanded universe and with everything that happened in the movies, there's plenty of material. So I don't know why they don't just do that. And it really, really worries me. Because there's a quote from the developer where they say, quote, "Battlefront was a multiplayer game." And I'm like, what? I loved it, but I never once played it online. For what I heard, the online wasn't that good, at least on PlayStation. So what do you mean it was a multiplayer game? I played a ton of that. I played co-op with my friends, was one of our favorite games. I loved the story, because it attached you to everything. A good plot is important, and I like single player more than most people. I'm not very big into multiplayer, but I think everyone would appreciate a good multiplayer, and a good single player. So, I hate this trend of being lazy on the single player, or in this case, even just not having it. You should not expand the multiplayer at the expense of the single player, especially when you have all of the maps anyway. It's not like Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2 had an amazing, Metal Gear-esque complex plot. It wasn't that complicated, but it attached you to the universe in a way that was fun. So I think it's a big loss. And on that same note, the number one thing we should want is probably the most played game mode, Galactic Conquest. This is mind-blowing to me. Why would you not put Galactic Conquest? It's actually less work than creating a paper-thin plot. Because you literally already have all the maps you need, because they have the multiplayer maps. So why not make that single player too? You basically have to do no work. Now, if they did do it, I would want it to be a little bit more like the first game, with multiple battles per planet, and the planets giving you a bonus that you can pick, rather than having to pay for a bonus like in the second game. But regardless, why would you not do that when you already have the maps? It's mind-blowing, because it would be so easy to do, and that was the thing I played the most. Because the campaigns, you play it once, maybe twice, you're done. You have your friends over, you play some co-op battles, you do Mos Eisley Assault from time to time, but the Galactic Conquest in both games is the fun part where you get to feel like you're actually turning the tide of an entire war. Including playing as the bad guys, change the course of the saga, make the rebels lose. It was fun, it wasn't that in-depth. Basically, all they did was put one cutscene at the end where your side won. But it was cool, and it's the main thing that I did, and I think most other people. So, I don't know about this game. Honestly, I'm kind of worried that it's not going to be very good. Now, I'm going to make another list of the top 5 things we don't want. As for honorable mentions of things we do want, though, more meaningful Jedi versus Jedi combat would be good. I mean, Mos Eisley Assault was an experiment, and it was a really good experiment, but basically you would win as a Jedi as long as you landed the first blow, most of the time. Because your first blow knocks your opponent off balance, and then you just combo them and they're dead. It's not very meaningful combat. So, that would be nice. That's not a big deal, though. Better online. They're already going to handle this. Like I said, I'm not an online person, but I understand that a lot of people are. And I wouldn't mind giving it a shot. So given that the first two were not known for very good online, it's at least good that they're going to step that up. And the last honorable mention was better space battles. Now, they've already said they're not going to have space battles at all. Which, for me, is basically fine. I didn't think they were that good. I thought they were unbalanced. I felt like the bomber was the only craft worth using to win. But it's an idea. I think what they should do is not do space battles in the next game. Focus on getting all the other things I mentioned done. And then after all those things are solid, then work on space battles. Because it's so different and it requires all this new programming, all these new units, all these starfighters, building the capital ships. It's a lot of work for not much reward. I always felt like they just broke the pace of the ground combat, which I didn't like. But anyway, those are the top 5 things and honorable mentions that I really want to be in Star Wars Battlefront 3. I know that we're not going to get a lot of them, but I keep having my fingers crossed that they'll realize it's really easy to add in Galactic Conquest and not that hard to add in a single-player plot. And I'm hoping they'll change their mind. So, if you're a fellow fan of the series, I've done my follow-up video. Tell me what you all think would be a good features for the game, how you feel about the games. Personally, my favorite was Battlefront 1, so I want it to be a bit more like that than Battlefront 2, but I know there are plenty of people who prefer 2. Any other features you want, any concerns you have. And keep an eye out for my top 5 things that we don't want in Star Wars Battlefront 3 video, coming up soon. Alright, thank you.